massive in Muslim majority countries such as Pakistan, Egypt, UAE, and many other countries. And Muslims too practice Islamophobia. In India, Javed Akhtar is a well-known Islamophobe, so is Shabana Azmi, and both get massive media visibility. Syria's dictator Assad was an Islamophobe in the same way as the current UAE leader is an Islamophobe. Now the question is, why this is the case? This is, I would argue, because Islamophobia emanates directly from the need for a new enemy of the New World Order. And this necessity is such that nation states like India and China, or the US and China, which are otherwise rivals to each other, they get united in designating Muslims as an enemy threat. So you fight among yourself, but when it comes to Islam and Muslims, there is an agreement that they are a threat. Now, some people think of Islamophobia in terms of stereotypes. Now, this is not a correct understanding because stereotypes not simply about Islam, indeed about other religions too, have existed for a long time. Those who are interested in the history of Islam, you would ask like, if hostility to Islam and Muslim is the main thing, then was Abu Jahl an Islamophobe? Because he ruthlessly opposed Prophet Muhammad. So one is not talking about simply stereotypes. They have existed about other religions too. What gives force to Islamophobia is that these stereotypes about Islam are connected deeply to the New World Order and its need for a global enemy. In the case of India, the link between Islamophobia and New World Order is manifest as follows. In a TV debate soon after 9/11, Narendra Modi, who was at that time BJP secretary, hailed and praised Indian media for speaking in footsteps of international media, what he called the truth, when it used the term called Islamic terrorism. And he opined that terrorism was innate to Islam, for it did not consider other religions to be true. In his view, the whole world had witnessed terrorism for 1400 years, that is, from the time of the Prophet Muhammad. He saw the post-9/11 era as a battle between humanity and terrorism. So this is the exchange which took place between him and a journalist. I will give you a quote. The journalist says, rather asks Mr. Modi, why don't you give one assurance that there will be an election campaign? When there will be an election campaign in UP, you will not use the 9/11 incident to stir a communal divide, to label every Muslim in this country as an Islamic terrorist. And here is his reply. It is a tragic condition in my Indian media that there is such a challenge to the humanity, and we are talking about footpath politics. What are we doing? When people are talking about the challenge to humanity, we are talking about UP politics, end of quote. Now, the key word in his response is humanity, pitted against terrorism. This humanity which he spoke of by expelling Muslims from the very domain of humanity did not exist as a prior idea. It was manufactured through the disingenuous discourse on terrorism that his party, but the Congress before also enacted on an international stage. In the same debate, Modi said, see, due to India's initiative at the UN twice, we have made terrorism an issue. We have succeeded in dividing the country into two camps. Those who are against terrorism and those who are in support of terrorism. I think that the recent incidents in America, 9/11, will intensify this. The world is about to be divided. into two parts, those who are in favor of humanity and those who are against humanity. End of quote. Now this initiative of India at the United Nations referred to was in 1996 when it proposed a comprehensive convention on international terrorism. This timing is curious, 1996, because 10 years ago in 1986, Benjamin Netanyahu, who was Israel's ambassador to the UN, he edited a book which was called Terrorism, How the West Can Win. And this edited book had over 30 contributions. It was saying, review that book. And he said that this book is not simply about the US policy, it was equally about Israel. He described the book as an example of pseudo-scholarship. And it was an incitement, according to say, it was an incitement to anti-Arab and anti-Muslim violence. Netanyahu's mobilization of terrorism as a threat to the West and its friends can be located in the backdrop of the statement by President Reagan in the early 1980s, when he identified terrorism as an enemy of the US and declared a war on terrorism. That Islamophobia is not simply about the beard or the hijab, but linked to the making of an enemy is illustrated by one key development in South Asia. Until 2002, along its earlier lightly guarded border with Bangladesh, India had only 200 kilometers of fenced belt until 2002. Between 2002 and 2011, India completed fencing 2,734 of its 4,096 kilometers of its borders. And this is very crucial. The whole thing has happened between 2002 and 2011. Now, the usual party politics that, okay, this is Congress versus BJP, there is a distraction. Now, we need to ask this question, why was this border built and what were the logic implied? So in an important book written by an American geographer, Ricky Jones, the book is titled Border Walls. So he went and also interviewed the people on both sides of the border and asked them what is the reasoning behind the justification of border making. And this is quite chilling. So he interviewed some Hindus on the Indian side of the border. And one interviewee, he made a direct connection between terrorism and Islam. And this guy is, by the way, college-educated Hindu. And he told Ricky Jones, and I quote, here, meaning India, we think that our next generation needs to be able to feed themselves. They, meaning Muslims in Bangladesh, they irrationally have 10 or 12 children and think Allah will take care of them. When we consider science, they just say Allah. They do not understand what friendship means. All over the world, terrorism is carried out by Muslims, Bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, Taliban. End of quote. Another interviewee who was a Hindu male shopkeeper, he said, President Bush is doing something about it, meaning terrorism. We support America because we are in the same situation. We realize that terrorism is beginning here and it is coming from Bangladesh. So these were the justification mobilized to building of the walls between 2002 and 2011. Now, of course, the general narrative is that unlike with Pakistan, India did not have any war with Bangladesh. It is also a friendly country. So why do you build this wall? What I have been arguing until now is that this was done in the wake of war on terror Islamophobia is not simply stereotypes, it is manifest in a strong policy-oriented building of walls, fenced barriers and so on. But what is crucial is the depictions of Muslim here. These two quotes that I gave you, Muslims appear as a barbarian, fanatic, irrational, and carriers of terrorism. And you remember Hiren Karlekar, he wrote a book after 9/11 which is called Bangladesh, New Afghanistan. Right? So it is, so this physical border making based on the logic of fighting terrorism is also a symbolic border making in which Islam and Muslims appear as the main threat. So my contention that Islamophobia is integral to the New World Order leads me to making the second argument, which is that we must think of it in relation to the notion of the making of home and love for home. That is domophilia. You see, domo and philia is love. Domo is a Latin Greek word. I suppose probably in Bangladesh you will also have this certificate which is called domicile certificate. So it is from the same word. Okay. Now this love for home, at least since 19th century, it has become synonymous with the nation state. And both nationalism and democracy are largely national territorial. That is, Islamophobia goes hand in hand with love for nation state. So now we are talking about not simply Islamophobia, but dialectically relating it to the notion of domophilia. So not only are nation states and home synonyms, nearly everything is nationalized. Knowledge is no exception. Disciplines like sociology, anthropology and history, they were supposed to historicize or sociologize nation state. However, under nationalism, these disciplines themselves became nationalist. So consider the names of some famous journals: Australian Journal of Political Science, British Journal of Sociology, German History, American Anthropologist, Contribution to Indian Sociology. Even the air stands nationalized. Air France, Air India, British Airways. Another example of this domophilia in the context of globe as well as South Asia. You see, what is currently BBC Radio 4, in the past it was called Home Program. And this home program was counterposed to BBC's Foreign Service. So this juxtaposition of home marked by us here and them foreign other is important. The notion of nation as home is unthinkable without its other, internal as well as external. To the German philosopher Johann Fichte, interior frontiers were the essence of the nation. In early 2002, I was conducting anthropological fieldwork in India when over 2,000 Muslims were killed in Gujarat. Now, after that anti-Muslim pogrom, a conference was organized in Aligarh, and that was the place where I was doing my fieldwork. So a speaker at the conference explained the massacre of Muslims as follows. The killers had Muslims to death because they considered Muslims as tenant, kirayadar. They considered Muslims as tenant living in India rather than India being the home of Muslims. So this is the juxtaposition. You are tenant, but you are behaving as if you own the home, and therefore the pogrom was like teaching a lesson to them, know your place. Now, this need to declare love for home has only increased under globalization. And you might find it contradictory because people were talking about borderless village or borderless global village. Now, precisely at a moment when the world is being thought of in terms of borderless world, you have intensive rise of nationalism, and they were deeply ethnic. So in this sense, globalization and homophilia, the love for the nation state, it goes hand in hand. The French anthropologist Marc calls non-places of supermodernity. In this non-places of supermodernity, actually the need for love for home is only heightened rather than decreased. Now here, we have a critical concept, which is secularization. So of course, before 19th century, European Christians did think about the world hereafter. So you have a concept called earthly home, which is here, but there is always a notion of heavenly home, which comes after death. What happened as a result of secularization, the loss of faith in heavenly home led to further increase in the love for earthly home, which is the nation state. And therefore, and you will find this, for example, in concepts which are very popular in Europe, in a very negative way, I would say, the slogans of Fortress Europe, Euradia. And if you read the manifesto of Anders Breivik, they all perfectly illustrate that despite this transformation of heavenly home into earthly home, xenophobia and the othering has not decreased by any means. To conclude, if Islamophobia is an outcome of the New World Order's need for a new enemy, an ever-increasing phenomenon of homophilia, which is love for the nation state as home, what is the solution? One solution to this obsession with home is to think of the figure of Darwish. So Muhammad Iqbal deployed this idea of Darwish. And for him, Darwish belonged neither to the east nor to the west. Darwish Khuda mast hai sharti hai na darwi. Right? So the home of Darwish is neither east and west, and by virtue of this Darwish belongs to nowhere and by extension everywhere. So this notion of Darwish is precisely the negation of territorial nation state. Okay, it is a global or universal form. Please give me 1.5 minutes. I want to conclude with some concrete examples of, or one concrete example of how Islamophobia operates in practice. And one manifestation of this Islamophobia is the secularization of Muslim female bodies as a result of Islamophobia. So in 2022, Muslim girls in Karnataka were debarred from pursuing education because of their choice to wear hijab. And very few feminists in India launched any significant protest against such a denial, showing how the so-called post-colonial feminism continues to be loyal to colonialism. So in place of colonial logic of what Spivak had said before, which is a famous quote, white men saving brown women from brown men. Today, what we see is this: blessed by both white men and women, Hindu men and women together are engaged in saving Muslim women from Muslim men. So the fact that such an incident as the one in Karnataka debarring Muslim women from pursuing education, it happens in India only shows that the world's largest democracy is also the biggest storehouse of Islamophobia. Thank you.
Thanks to Dr. Ahmad for the wonderful presentation.